Hello, you're listening to a FoodBev.com podcast, and my name is Sean Weston. Martina Grupo is the entrepreneur behind Hada del Café, a coffee business and social enterprise that's affecting the lives of others in the northern Nicaraguan mountains. I spoke to Martina about her background, how she got into the coffee industry, and about how her work with the farmers and school children of Nicaragua affects her business interests. You run a coffee business, is that right?
I do, yes.
What's it called?
An independent coffee business.
An independent coffee business. What's the business called?
It's called Hada del Café, which is Spanish for the coffee fairy tale.
Okay, why did you pick Spanish?
Because that's exactly where I get the coffee from. I decided the company used to be called the Coffee Fairy, but that was when it was more of a cottage industry. When I rebranded last year, I decided to take the name the Coffee Fairy and make it Spanish, translate it into Spanish as a nod to all my existing customers who knew it as the Coffee Fairy. And I also wanted it to be a nod to where the coffee comes from, its Latin American roots. Mm-hmm. And the coffee obviously comes from Nicaragua.
How did you get into the coffee business?
I volunteered in Nicaragua for a year as a teacher up in the Nicaraguan mountains. And while I was out there, I noticed that the coffee tasted fantastic. And I started a very small cottage industry with the women in the community, taking their coffee in a rucksack every weekend and selling it to various different places on the west coast of Nicaragua. So they would roast it, grind it, hand package it, and I would put it all into a box or into my rucksack initially and just take it around and sell it. It came out of the fact that there were a lot of tourist backpackers and people who were staying on the west coast of Nicaragua who really wanted to taste the real coffee, the coffee that was actually grown in Nicaragua. And I realized that a lot of it was being shipped out, and the coffee that was available was a dreadful sort of cafe presto, which is instant coffee. Mm-hmm. People really wanted to know what the real stuff tasted like. So I sort of put the two together, if you like.
Well, it's very entrepreneurial for a teacher. Have you always had that entrepreneurial spirit?
No, I used to be an office manager. I don't know. I just saw a gap where the women wanted to make extra money for themselves, and I wanted to do something that would bring in some extra income for them, and also find a way of getting this really great tasting coffee out to a wider market.
Mm. Now, you have an interesting story, don't you? In that you're not just trying to succeed in the coffee business, but you're helping as well, aren't you?
Yes, it started off, while I was out there volunteering, it never occurred to me that I would actually start up my own business. While I was out there, it was just a question of helping them. But obviously I was teaching English, and I noticed that the children had a real desire to carry on their further education. Whereas in this country, secondary education is a given, and over there it's not. You can only go on to secondary education if you can afford it. So there were a lot of children falling by the wayside, if you like, whose families couldn't afford to send them on, to carry on for their the next part of their education. And because of this, I just thought there must be something where I can help this and sell the coffee. So initially, I didn't really have any desire to set up my own business. But once the cottage industry, if you like, became successful, I thought, how hard can this be to do this on an international level? And if I had known then what I know now, I may have paused slightly. But I think once I went back and I found the farmers who were able to sell me the coffee, because a lot of the farmers out there are contracted to sell only if they're in a cooperative, only if they belong to a cooperative. So I found a group of farmers who didn't belong to a cooperative, who for geographical reasons or because of the size of their farms couldn't afford to belong to a cooperative. And I met up with them and we talked several times. We had several meetings, and I said, well, if your coffee is so good, why don't we do something where I ship it back to England, you sell it to me, and in return for really good coffee. And I was very clear about this, because I said, if you do sell me the substandard coffee or coffee that isn't as good, this is going to fall flat on its face before we even get started. if your coffee is really good, this project could run and run, or this, this business could run and run, but, we need to have excellent quality coffee. In return, I asked them what they would like from me, apart from the fact that I was going to be buying it from them directly, and that there would be other advantages, such as the fact that they would know exactly where their coffee was going to end up. I also put in some other, there was other things which I helped out with, such as the transport to the processing plant and things like that. And they said, well, our children really need help with their education. And I said, well, then what I can do is not promote, but I can actually talk to schools and colleges and places like, and people about what life is like for the children in these coffee growing communities. And we'll see if we can raise some funds, and we'll see if we can improve the educational facilities out there. And it really started off, it sounds a bit cliche, but as a bean of an idea. Yeah. And that was 5 years ago. And since then, I think we've I've raised over £23,000.
That's fantastic. And what is the final goal?
It's an ongoing goal, if you like. I mean, I would really love to build a bridge. That seems ridiculous and quite far removed from the educational side of things. At the moment, there is a secondary school which has been built, and we're just waiting for the Nicaraguan government to provide teachers into this school, which was just a primary school up in the community. I've completed that build. I'm now onto my second building of a classroom in another area, which was where the coffee actually directly comes from. This whole community covers about 200 square miles. But this other school, that's now finished. That's completed. The secondary school has been completed for that. We're just waiting for the permission to come through. The next building and all the books and the water filters and all the other things I'm providing are very beneficial to the community. But for the long-term goal, there's a river which these communities have access, have to cross. The transport to the communities goes across this river. And when it's particularly rainy season, it's blocked off. The river is actually blocked off. And that means that the round trip is about 5 hours for them to get to the nearest town. And that has a massive impact on anybody. If anybody is sick, if anybody needs to go to school, everything it sort of encompasses the whole of community life. And their lives would be made much easier if they had some sort of I don't want to do anything that isn't sustainable or isn't, how would you say that? I don't want to do anything that would adversely affect the nature of the place. But I think that some sort of almost like a causeway going across this river would massively help for their transport to be consistent throughout the year, not just, when it's the dry season and the river is low.
What about the balance between doing these altruistic things or almost altruistic things and running a profitable business? Is that a real hard thing to do both, to look after both?
I'd say that's as close to being impossible as come. It's not. It's a long road. Things aren't going to happen overnight. I mean, the fact that I've raised so much money so far makes me believe in this. The fact that the coffee is a incredible quality coffee makes me believe that it is possible to do this. The balance between making a profit and actually running, like you say, an altruistic business or a social enterprise, it's tough. It is really, really difficult. And I do question myself some of the time and wonder what I'm doing. I don't want to do anything else. I love this. And, the good times do outweigh the bad. Some of the time it does feel as if I'm banging my head against a brick wall. And I'm telling you, running a company in 2 different countries, in 2 fairly far apart countries, is tough as well. But I believe it will get there.
Well, also, you've decided to do this, or it's come into your life at least, during a very difficult economic period for us. How is that affecting things, do you think?
You've got to look at the glass half full, haven't you, rather than half empty. Yes, it is a really difficult time to start a business, and I started it right at the very start of the recession, and now we're into the second part of that. I think my motto this year is hold your nerve. I've got to keep going. I have got to keep going, because if I've got this far and people still love the coffee, and I'm now shipping internationally as well. I'm shipping to places like Paris and Taiwan, and it's in Dubai as well. This does work. This will work. So yes, it is a recession, but the best businesses survive a recession.
Now, have you considered actually working with other people, or is this still very much your thing and you'd like to keep it your thing for the time being?
What do you mean by other people?
Bringing in business partners, perhaps.
I do have a business partner who
Ah.
helped. Yes, he helped me change this from a cottage industry, if you like, because before I had packaging, which was very much a rustic feel, very, just plain brown packaging with labels on. And while that worked, it had to go to the next level in order for it to be embraced by other retail outlets. And he enabled me to do that, which is why I redesigned the packaging last year, came up with the new name, which we're now trading as Hada del Cafe instead of the Coffee Fairy. Mm-hmm. But yes, so in effect, yes, I do have a business partner, and he's very good and he's very supportive. But what I would like to do is to really push this out into a much wider market.
How are you doing that? How are you actually marketing the story? Aside from podcasts with FoodBev.com, and I understand you did an interview with Radio 4 as well. How else are you marketing what you're doing and your story?
In publications, national publications, Good Housekeeping wrote an article about me this month. I think the story behind somebody like me, and when I say like me, I just mean somebody of my age starting a business and making things happen. I think the story is very interesting to the wider market, plus the fact it's a quality product. I think those two really marry it up. Plus, I think as well, Sean, there's a real sense of people wanting to know, where what they're eating or drinking comes from. They want to know the source, and they actually want to know that it is doing good. People are no longer interested in just certification. There's an awful lot of certificates out there on all sorts of food products saying this is the good that we're doing, or that's the good that we're doing, or this is where the money's going. But nobody can actually see where the money's going. And what makes me different and what makes my story different is I have photographs, video footage, lists of things that are actually changing the lives of the people over there. And I'm not doing this without help. The schools who raise the money with me as a result of me going and giving talks and everything. It's not just me that's doing this, but people really want proof, I suppose. They really want to see that they're actually contributing to something. And that's what I'm doing. And that's what makes it interesting, ultimately.
Now, your part in the coffee business, obviously you're bringing fantastic tasting coffee to people who haven't tasted that sort of thing before. But what are you doing marketing for your product exactly? Is flavoured coffee something that you would get into? Is strange, unusual packaging something that you would get into?
Well, the packaging works so well, and the packaging was one of the things that I desperately wanted to change, because the old style packaging, it's very dark, it's quite sort of moody looking old, coffee packaging, and I wanted to bring something that was bright and also that people could see straight away what, I'm not sure if I've understood your question correctly, but
no, I think you have actually, yeah, because coffee packaging did used to be dark and very grown up, didn't it? And it's become fun.
Yes, and I also,
a better word, yeah,
exactly. And I wanted to do something. I think people are tiring of this photographs of things. I wanted that you could look at a package and you knew exactly which roast. So there's no numbers on my coffee. It's not number 4, therefore it's this particular strength. I provide 3 roasts. I want to keep it very, very simple: a medium, a dark, and an espresso, which caters for all tastes. So everybody gets what they want from it, and they know exactly which is the colour that they like. So I sometimes get phone calls of people saying, "Oh, I really want some more of your coffee. Would you be able to send this to me, or could I have this? And which roast did you have?" And they say, "Oh, it's the green packaging. It's the one with the green on it." So you know straight away. And people want simple stuff. They don't want to be overcomplicated, despite the fact that you can go into a high street coffee shop and be asked for 20 different ways of having your coffee. I think ultimately people just want a really good experience when they're having a cup of coffee, and that's just to like it.
I think you're right. How do you keep up with competition? How do you stay abreast of global changes in the coffee industry?
Well, the harvests have been really hard over the last couple of years because they've had such extensive rainfall, and that has adversely impacted some of the coffee. But it's a natural product, so you're going to have fluctuations in in what the product is like. And I try and keep it consistent in terms of, I've got an excellent roasting company down in Pembrokeshire who do all of my roasting. And what the guy down there, Phil, doesn't know about coffee isn't worth knowing about. And what a lot of people, I think, go into are roasting, or they start off their own roasteries, if you like, thinking that it's a fairly straightforward thing to do, but it's not. It takes years and years of experience, and it's as important to roast the coffee well as it is to have a good bean to start off with. And how I deal with the competition, well, I just let them get on with it. I just have great coffee. So, you know, they have their own thing and I have my own thing. I think a healthy competition is a good thing.
I totally agree, and that's a wonderful, confident attitude, a very entrepreneurial attitude, I must say.
Thank
Really
you.
enjoyed talking to you today about your story and your coffee. So I'll leave you with one final question then. What is your perfect coffee?
My perfect coffee is medium. It's my medium roast. It's just very easy drinking. It's not as strong as the dark. But then again, having said that, there's two sides to everything. And I love the espresso after dinner.
Yeah. So it's a mood thing.
Yes, it is. It really is.
Thank you very much, Martina Grupo. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Sean. Thanks.
Thanks for downloading this FoodBev.com podcast. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Tumblr, Twitter, Vimeo, Google+, and LinkedIn.